My own son-in-law, living in my house, tricked me into signing a quitclaim deed he'd hidden in a stack of papers. He forged my signature on a document that stole my entire legacy. He thought he was just one step away from cashing in. He didn't know I was one step ahead of him. Before I begin, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for choosing to listen to my story. I made the decision to use my own voice to tell it, even though it's grown frail with age. I know I may tremble, and I'm sorry if it's hard to hear. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It means more than you know. Now, let me tell you what they did to me. My name is Vivian Rhodes, and at 72, my world had begun to soften at the edges. For 40 years as a city planner, I had lived a life of sharp lines, of blueprints, of the clear hard logic of zoning laws and property deeds. My vision, once sharp enough to spot a misplaced decimal on a complex survey, was now clouded by macular degeneration, a slow, creeping fog that made the world a beautiful but frustrating blur. My home, however, was a place I knew by heart. It was a beautiful historic brownstone in a neighborhood that was now fiercely, almost violently, gentrifying around me. It was my family's legacy, paid off long ago, a quiet testament to a life of hard work and prudent saving. After my husband James passed, the house had felt too big, too quiet. So when my daughter Chantel and her husband Dorian suggested they move in to help me out and save up, my lonely heart had readily agreed. Chantel was my only child, a sweet but easily influenced woman. Her husband, Dorian King, was another matter entirely. Dorian, at 45, was a man who vibrated with a desperate, hungry ambition. He was a small-time property flipper, a man who saw the world not as a place to live, but as a collection of assets to be acquired and liquidated. He moved through my historic home not with the reverence of a family member, but with the appraising eye of a developer, his gaze lingering on the original crown moldings and hardwood floors, as if he were already calculating his profit margin. "Vivian," he'd say, his voice a smooth, slick purr, "do you have any idea what this property is worth now? The houses on this block are selling for a fortune. A little modernizing, an open concept kitchen. You could be sitting on a gold mine." "It's my home, Dorian," I would reply gently. "Not a gold mine." He would just smile, a condescending little smirk that never reached his eyes. He saw my love for my home as a sentimental weakness, my age and my failing eyesight as an opportunity. Chantel, my daughter, was a willing, if often silent accomplice to his growing greed. She was blinded by his charm, by his grand promises of a life of luxury that always seemed just one big flip away. She would stand by, her face a mask of anxious neutrality, as he would subtly, consistently undermine my authority. In my own home, the help they provided was a slow, insidious takeover. They began to manage my mail, my bills, my appointments, all under the guise of making things easier for me. "Don't you worry about this, Mom," Chantel would say, intercepting a letter from the bank. "It's just boring financial stuff. We'll take care of it." I let them. My vision made reading the fine print, the endless pages of legal and financial documents, a frustrating, headache-inducing ordeal. I had spent my life in that world of paper, but now it had become a foreign country. I had to rely on them, on my own daughter, to be my eyes, my guide. I trusted her. That was my greatest, most catastrophic mistake. The final act of their quiet conspiracy began on a Tuesday afternoon. Dorian came to me with a thick stack of papers, his face a mask of urgent, professional concern. "Vivian," he began, his voice full of a false sincerity, "these are just some routine city tax assessment papers. With the property values going up, they need an updated signature on file. It's just a formality, but they need it by the end of the week." He spread the papers out on the dining room table. They were dense with legal jargon, a sea of tiny black letters that swam before my blurry eyes. I reached for my powerful magnifying glass, my one true tool of independence, but he gently pushed it aside. "Don't worry about all that, Vivian," he said smoothly. "It's just standard boilerplate. I've already read through it all. You just need to sign on the highlighted lines." I hesitated, a flicker of my old, professional caution stirring within me. "I should really read it first, Dorian," he sighed, a sound of deep, put-upon exasperation. "Vivian, we don't have time for that. The courier is waiting. It's just a tax form." "Are you saying you don't trust me? After all we do for you?" The accusation, the subtle emotional blackmail, hit its mark. To refuse would be to accuse my own family of deceit. It would be to admit that our loving, supportive arrangement was a sham. And so, with a heavy heart, I did what so many women of my generation were taught to do. I chose peace over suspicion. I chose to trust. I took the pen he offered, and I signed my name where his finger pointed. My signature, once so firm and confident, now a little shaky, a little uncertain. I signed page after page, a trusting lamb being led to the slaughter. I had no idea I wasn't just signing a tax form. I was signing away my home, my legacy, my entire life. The week following my signing of the tax papers was filled with a strange, almost manic energy in the house. Dorian was on the phone constantly, his voice a low, excited murmur as he spoke to people I didn't know, bankers, investors, contractors. He and Chantel would huddle together in the evenings, poring over blueprints and design swatches, their whispers full of a triumphant, conspiratorial glee. I assumed it was for a new flipping project, another one of his get-rich-quick schemes that would likely, as they always did, fizzle out into nothing. I retreated into my own quiet world, my books, my music, my memories, blissfully unaware that the project they were so excitedly planning was the hostile takeover of my own home. The official confirmation of their betrayal arrived 2 weeks later, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet, bureaucratic finality of a letter from the county clerk's office. It was a standard, official-looking envelope, the kind I had seen 1,000 times in my career as a city planner. I took it to my small reading desk, my heart holding no premonition of the devastation it contained. I sat down, switched on my brightest lamp, and picked up my strongest magnifying glass, the one with the built-in light. The document inside was a copy of a quitclaim deed. My hands began to tremble as I slowly, painstakingly moved the magnifying glass over the dense legal text. The words, when they finally came into focus, were a death sentence. I, Vivian Rhodes, for and in consideration of the sum of $1 and other good and valuable consideration, receipt of which is hereby acknowledged, do hereby remise, release, and forever quit claim to Dorian King, grantee, all my right, title, interest, and claim in and to the following described land. It was followed by the legal description of my property, my home, the home on Chestnut Street, and at the bottom of the page, my own signature, shaky but undeniable, next to the embossed, official-looking seal of a notary public. The air rushed from my lungs. It couldn't be. It was a mistake. A terrible bureaucratic error. But as I stared at the document, at the date, the very day Dorian had rushed me into signing the tax papers, the horrifying truth began to settle over me like a shroud. There had been no tax papers. He had buried a quitclaim deed, a document that signed away my entire life's work, in a stack of meaningless forms, and had used my failing eyesight, my trust in him, my love for my daughter, to trick me into signing it. He had stolen my house from me, right under my own roof. A wave of nausea and a profound, disorienting grief washed over me. I thought of my late husband, James. I thought of my parents, who had helped us with the initial down payment. I thought of the 40 years of love and laughter and life that had been lived within these walls. And now, with a simple, fraudulent stroke of a pen, it all belonged to him, to Dorian, a man who saw it not as a home, but as a commodity. The silence of the house, which had once been my comfort, was now a menacing thing, the silence of a prison I no longer owned. I looked around at my familiar things, my books, my art, the armchair James had always sat in, and I saw them not as my own, but as the possessions of a stranger, a woman who was now merely a tenant in her own life, living on the charity of her own thief. My first instinct was to confront them, to scream, to rage, to show them the proof of their monstrous betrayal. But a cold, strategic part of my mind, the city planner, the woman who understood systems and strategy, held me back. A hysterical outburst would only play into their hands. They would use my righteous anger as proof of my confusion, my senility. See, we told you she was losing it. She doesn't even remember signing the papers. No, I would not give them that satisfaction. My battle would not be fought with emotion. It would be fought with facts, with the law, with the very system they had tried to manipulate. My mind began to work, sifting through the details of the past few weeks, searching for a weakness, a flaw in their plan. And then I remembered. The notary. The signature on the deed had been notarized. By whom? I looked at the document again, my magnifying glass hovering over the embossed seal. The name was faint, but legible. Harold Henderson. Mr. Henderson, a man from my church, a kind, devout, elderly man in his late 70s, a man I had known for over 20 years, a man whose own eyesight I knew was not what it used to be. Dorian, in his cruel cunning, had not gone to a stranger, to a professional notary at a bank. He had gone to a trusted, familiar face, an old man he could likely rush, confuse, and manipulate into notarizing a document without scrutinizing it too closely. And in that moment, I knew what my first step had to be. I would not confront Dorian. I would not confront my daughter. I would go to Mr. Henderson. I would go to the man whose official seal had been used to legitimize the theft of my life. I would go to him not with accusations, but with the quiet, devastating truth. My revenge would not begin with a shout. It would begin with a quiet conversation, a cup of tea, and the slow, righteous unraveling of my son-in-law's perfect crime. The 2 days following my discovery were a quiet, agonizing performance. I had to pretend that nothing had changed. I had to smile at Chantal, my daughter, my betrayer, as she chattered on about her day. I had to endure Dorian's presence in my home, his smug, proprietary air, now a constant, silent torment. He thought he was the new king of this castle. He had no idea the deposed queen was quietly plotting a revolution from her own small room. My grief, which had been a raw open wound, began to transform. It cooled, hardened, and sharpened into the cold, precise fury of the city planner I had once been. I was a woman who understood blueprints, who knew that the strongest structures are built on an unshakable foundation of fact. And I was about to excavate the facts of my son-in-law's deceit with a relentless, methodical precision. My first and most crucial task was to secure my first witness. I needed Mr. Henderson on my side. I called him, my voice full of a warm, neighborly charm I did not feel. "Harold," I said, "it's Vivian Rhodes. I was hoping I could trouble you for a cup of your famous sweet tea. There's a small matter I was hoping to get your wise counsel on." He was, as always, a perfect gentleman. He invited me over that very afternoon. I walked the 3 blocks to his small, tidy house, the fraudulent deed tucked safely in my handbag, my heart a steady, determined drum. He greeted me with a kind smile, but his eyes were full of a gentle concern. "Vivian," he said, after we had settled in his sunlit living room, "I was so glad you called. I must confess, I have been a little worried about you since your son-in-law, Dorian, came to see me last week." My heart gave a small leap. "He told you I was unwell?" I asked quietly. Mr. Henderson sighed, a sound of deep, troubled sympathy. "He did. He said you were having memory lapses, that you were getting confused about important papers. He was in such a rush, said he needed the tax forms notarized immediately for a deadline. He had you on the phone telling me it was all right to proceed. He seemed so concerned. He had put me on the phone. I had no memory of this. They must have done it while I was napping, or perhaps after I had taken one of the new, helpful sleeping pills my daughter had so thoughtfully provided. The depth of their deception was even more profound than I had imagined. I took a deep breath. "Harold," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "he lied to you. He lied to me, and he used you and your good name to commit a crime." I slid the copy of the quitclaim deed across the table. I pointed to his notary seal, to my forged-looking shaky signature. "This was not a tax form, Harold. This was a quitclaim deed. He tricked me into signing away my home, and he tricked you into notarizing it." The color drained from Mr. Henderson's kind face. He took the document, his own hands trembling slightly as he read it. His initial confusion gave way to a dawning horror, and then to a righteous, sputtering rage. That scoundrel," he stammered, his face flushing with a deep, angry red. "He used me, used my office, my seal, to defraud a friend, a member of my own church. Vivian, I'm so deeply sorry. I had no idea. He seemed so plausible, so concerned." "I know, Harold," I said gently. "That is his gift, but his gift is about to become his curse." I looked him directly in the eye. "I'm going to fight him. I'm going to take back my home, but I cannot do it alone. I will need a witness. I will need you to testify about the deceptive and rushed way he had you notarize this document." His resolve was immediate and absolute. "Testify?" he said, his voice ringing with a new, fierce strength. "My dear Vivian, I will do more than testify. I will give a sworn, notarized affidavit detailing his every word, his every action. I will go to the police. I will go to the district attorney. That boy has brought a profound shame upon himself, and he will not hide behind my good name to do it." I left his house that afternoon with my first and most important ally secured. His sworn affidavit detailing Dorian's lies and manipulative tactics would be a powerful weapon, a direct refutation of any claim that I had signed the document willingly or with full knowledge. My next step was to hire a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I needed a shark, someone who understood the dirty, brutal world of real estate fraud. Mr. Henderson, through his own network, gave me a name, a young, hungry, and brilliant litigator named Marcus Thorne. I met with him the next day. I laid out my case, my evidence, Mr. Henderson's affidavit. He was, to put it mildly, appalled and professionally delighted. "Mrs. Rhodes," he said, a dangerous glint in his eye, "this is not just a case of fraud. This is a conspiracy, and we are going to dismantle it piece by piece. Our strategy," he explained, "would be one of quiet, patient, and devastating precision. We would not file an immediate injunction to stop the sale. That would alert Dorian, give him time to hide assets, to create a new web of lies. No," Mr. Thorne had said, a slow, predatory smile on his face, "we are going to let him proceed. We are going to let him find a buyer. We are going to let him get all the way to the closing table." So confident in his victory, he leaned forward. And then, and only then, at the moment of his greatest triumph, we are going to walk in and burn his entire world to the ground. In front of everyone. The plan was audacious, theatrical, and deeply, deeply satisfying. For the next few weeks, I became a quiet spy in my own home, a ghost at the feast of their impending fortune. I listened to their excited phone calls with real estate agents, their gleeful discussions about the offers they were receiving. They were so close to their goal, so blinded by their greed, they never once suspected that their confused old mother was quietly, methodically, orchestrating their spectacular, public, and very legal downfall. The weeks leading up to the closing were a masterclass in psychological endurance. I had to live under the same roof as my own personal Judas, my son-in-law Dorian, and my daughter, Chantel, his silent, complicit partner in crime. I had to endure their smug, triumphant glances, their hushed, excited conversations about the small fortune they were about to receive from the sale of my home. They treated me with a new, almost benevolence, condescension, the kindness of a zookeeper towards an old, harmless animal whose cage was about to be permanently relocated. "Just a few more weeks, Vivian," Doran would say with a magnanimous smile, "and we'll have you settled in a lovely, much more manageable senior apartment. No more stairs for you to worry about." He was framing my eviction as an act of loving care. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. Meanwhile, my own quiet war was proceeding with a beautiful, silent efficiency. My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, was a marvel. He worked with a quiet, relentless precision, assembling our case, preparing our ambush. He had taken Mr. Henderson's sworn affidavit, a powerful testament to Dorian's deceit, and had used it to build the foundation of our legal strategy. We decided against filing an immediate lawsuit. That would have been too conventional, too predictable. It would have given them time to prepare, to hide, to spin a new web of lies. No, our revenge had to be as shocking and as public as their own betrayal had been private and insidious. Our stage would be the closing itself. Mr. Thorne, through a discreet inquiry, obtained the details of the sale, the name of the title company, the date and the time of the closing. He then prepared our weapons. First, a formal, notice of competing claim and lease pendants, a legal document that would, when filed, officially dispute the ownership of the property and effectively hold any sale until the claim was resolved in court. Second, he prepared a comprehensive package of our evidence, a copy of the original true deed to my house, Mr. Henderson's damning affidavit detailing the fraudulent notarization, and a brief, cutting summary of Dorian's action. The plan was simple. We would let them get all the way to the closing table. We would let them sit there, their pens poised, their hearts full of greedy anticipation, just moments away from their victory. And then we would walk in. The waiting was the hardest part. I had to maintain my performance as the frail, slightly confused old woman, all while my heart pounded with a furious, righteous energy. I listened to their plans for the money, a new car for Dorian, a lavish European vacation for Chantel, a down payment on a new, even more impressive mansion. They were spending my legacy before it was even in their hands, their casual, entitled conversations a constant, grinding insult to my very presence. My only solace was my quiet late-night phone calls with Mr. Thorne. He would update me on his progress, his voice, a calm, reassuring presence in the storm of my emotions. "Patience, Vivian," he would tell me. "The arrogant always underestimate the quiet ones. Their confidence is their greatest weakness, and we are going to use it to bring them down." The day before the closing, I did one final, small act of my own. I went to the local bakery and ordered a large, beautiful, custom-decorated cake. On it, in elegant, swirling script, I had them write, "Congratulations on your new home." I told the baker to deliver to the title company's office at precisely 3 o'clock the next day, the time of our scheduled ambush. It was a small petty detail, perhaps, but the thought of them, in the midst of their public humiliation, being presented with a celebratory cake, brought a small cold smile to my face. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in my armchair, the original deed to my house, resting in my lap, its old brittle paper a tangible link to my past, to my family, to my own hard-won legacy. Tomorrow, I would fight for it. Tomorrow, I would reclaim it. Tomorrow, the quiet, underestimated city planner was going to teach her arrogant, property-flipping son-in-law a final, unforgettable lesson in the true meaning of ownership. The trap was set, and Dorian King, in his blind, greedy arrogance, was about to walk right into it. The conference room at the downtown title company was a place of hushed, expensive importance. The air smelled of leather and money. A long, polished mahogany table dominated the room, its surface reflecting the gray, overcast sky outside. Seated on one side were the buyers, a young, eager couple, their faces alight with the nervous excitement of first-time homeowners. On the other side sat my daughter, Chantel, and her husband Dorian. They were beaming, triumphant, the picture of a successful couple about to close a major deal. Dorian, in a sharp, tailored suit, looked like the king of the world. Chantel, beside him, was practically vibrating with a smug, self-satisfied glee. I arrived with my lawyer, Marcus Thorne, and my key witness, Mr. Henderson, at precisely 2:55, 5 minutes before the scheduled closing. We did not enter the conference room immediately. We waited in the lobby, a silent, formidable trio, the calm before the storm. At precisely 3 o'clock, we walked in. The change in the room's atmosphere was immediate and electric. The cheerful chatter ceased, the smiles froze on their faces. Dorian looked up, his expression shifting from triumphant satisfaction to a pale, baffled confusion. Chantel's face went through a spectacular series of emotions. Surprise, then annoyance, then a dawning, panicked horror as she saw not just me, but the two serious-looking men who flanked me. Chantel stammered, her voice a little too loud in the silent room. What are you doing here? Dorian shot to his feet, his face flushing with a sudden, angry red. Vivian! This is a private meeting. You have no business being here. I did not speak to him. I did not even look at him. I addressed my words to the title agent, a professional-looking woman at the head of the table, who was now staring at us with wide, confused eyes. I apologize for the interruption, I said, my voice calm, clear, and full of an authority that made everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. My name is Vivian Rhodes, and I am the true and sole legal owner of the property you are about to sell. A collective gasp went through the room. The young buyers looked at each other, their joyful expressions turning to ones of alarm. Dorian's lawyer, a slick man I didn't recognize, jumped to his feet. Objection. This is outrageous. My client, Mr. Dorian King, is the legal owner of this property. We have the deed to prove it. You now. My lawyer, Mr. Thorne, said, stepping forward, a dangerous, predatory smile on his face. He placed a single, crisp, beautiful document on the table. Because we have the original true deed, the one that has been in my client's family for over 60 years. He then placed Mr. Henderson's sworn affidavit beside it, and we also have a sworn statement from the very notary public, whose seal appears on your client's fraudulent document, testifying that he was tricked into notarizing it under false pretenses by your client, Mr. King. Chaos erupted. The title agent's face went pale. She immediately picked up the phone, her voice a low, urgent murmur as she spoke to her company's legal department. The young buyers were on their feet, their faces a mixture of fury and disbelief, demanding to know what was going on. Dorian just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, his entire world, his entire fraudulent scheme crumbling around him. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a desperate, pleading panic. He had been caught, utterly, completely, publicly caught. The title agent, her face now a grim professional mask, hung up the phone. I'm sorry, everyone, she announced, her voice firm, but this closing is hereby halted, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into this competing claim and these very serious allegations of fraud. The buyers, now furious, turned on Dorian. You tried to sell us a house you didn't even own, the young husband shouted. We'll see you in court. They stormed out of the room. Their dream of a new home turned into a nightmare of legal entanglements. And then, as if on cue, there was a knock on the conference room door. A young woman from the front desk poked her head in. Excuse me, she said, looking confused. I have a cake delivery for a Mr. Dorian King. It says, congratulations on your new home. I looked at Dorian, at his ashen, horrified face, and I allowed myself a small, cold, and deeply, deeply satisfying smile. My revenge was complete. I had not just stopped the sale. I had turned his moment of greatest triumph into a spectacular, public, and utterly humiliating farce. He had tried to steal my home. Instead, he had lost everything. The implosion of Dorian King's life, which had begun so spectacularly in that title company conference room, was a swift and satisfying affair. The title agent, legally obligated to report a case of potential real estate fraud, had immediately flagged the transaction with the state authorities. The buyers, furious at having been duped, had immediately filed a civil suit against him for their expenses and for damages. And I was my lawyer, Marcus Thorne, had filed my own lawsuit to have the fraudulent quitclaim deed officially and permanently nullified. Dorian was a man besieged. He was facing multiple lawsuits, a state investigation into his business practices, and the very real threat of criminal charges for forgery and fraud. His reputation as a successful property flipper was in tatters. No one would work with him. No one would lend to him. His house of cards, built on a foundation of lies and my own stolen legacy, had been utterly, completely demolished. The legal battle to nullify the deed was a short one. Faced with the original deed, Mr. Henderson's damning testimony, and the clear evidence of his deceit, Dorian had no defense. The judge voided the fraudulent deed, restoring me as the sole, unassailable owner of my home, and ordered Dorian to pay for all of my substantial legal fees. My home was mine again, but it was a home I no longer wanted. It was tainted by their betrayal, haunted by the ghosts of their greed. And so, with the help of a reputable real estate agent this time, I put it on the market. It sold within a week for a price that was even higher than what Dorian had been offered. Lebeche offered, with the proceeds from the sale, a significant fortune that was now entirely, unequivocally mine. I began to build my new life. I bought a beautiful, sun-drenched condominium in a quiet, elegant building downtown, a place with a view of the city skyline and no memories but the ones I chose to make. And what of Chantal and Dorian? Their marriage, a union built on a shared, shallow ambition, could not survive the weight of their public disgrace and financial ruin. They divorced. Chantal, stripped of the lavish lifestyle she so desperately craved, moved back in with her own parents, her social standing in ruins. And Dorian, my son-in-law, the man who had tried to steal my home, was last I heard facing indictment, his future a bleak landscape of legal battles and potential jail time. My revenge was complete, but it was not a victory I celebrated with glee. It was a somber, necessary, and deeply satisfying reclamation of my own life, my own dignity, my own power. A few weeks after I had settled into my new home, I did one last thing. I sat down at my new, elegant writing desk, and I wrote a check, a very large check. It was a donation to the local Legal Aid Society, the very organization that helps low-income seniors fight against fraud and abuse. I established a new fund in my late husband's name, the James Rhodes Foundation for Elder Justice. Its purpose was to ensure that other elderly men and women who might not have the resources or the knowledge to fight back, as I had, would have a shark like Marcus Thorne in their corner. My final act of revenge was not against my son-in-law, but for every other person like me. I had taken the pain of his betrayal and had transformed it into a legacy of protection, of justice, of hope. I had walked into that closing, not as a victim, but as a warrior. I had reclaimed my home, my legacy, and my peace. And in doing so, I had proven that even when a woman's eyes are weak, her vision for justice can be sharp, clear, and absolutely unyieldingly powerful.